Hi everyone, this is Barney Davy and thank you for joining me with the Art Market Coffee Talk. I'm privileged today to be interviewing Eric Smith. He's the CEO of Redwood Media Group, and if you don't know what that is, I can tell you that you would know some of these names. He's the producer of probably more fine art shows than anyone else, possibly even in history. We'll have to ask him about that, but he's got an upcoming show in New York, the ArtExpo New York, that I think is on its 39th anniversary. We'll find out again on that. It includes Solo 2017, Photo Solo 2017. He's got shows coming up in Santa Fe and Palm Desert. We'll learn more about those, so let's get to it. Hi, Eric. How are you today?
I'm great, Barney. You caught me. I just got off the tennis court.
Fantastic. That means you're living the good life.
Yeah.
You're in Palm Desert, right?
I am.
And like me in Phoenix, it gets pretty warm there in the summertime. Are you able to play year round?
You get up early.
Like we do here. You want to walk the dog, you better get out early, or you're not going to get it done.
Yep.
You and I have a long history, Eric. We're going back to the late 1980s. Hard to believe that in those days, art business was so much different than it is today. Things we take for granted now, like internet, email, mobile phones, they weren't part of everyday life then. What's the driving motivation that's kept you involved in the art business over that many years?
And that's a good question. I've never really thought of that. I think it's exciting,
right,
to produce events because you work really hard leading up to the event. The event happens, and it's kind of exhilarating. And then, if you ask my staff after the event, there's a little depression that sets in. I think you remember that when we were doing the framing shows. It's that you build up, and then all of a sudden, poof, you're literally depressed for about a week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're working on the next events, and it kind of gets going again, and it's a high, and then poof, and then you work on the next event. It's kind of a cycle, but that, and seeing some of the artists and the galleries and the publishers become successful and create businesses and broaden their distribution, and
Well, you like me, you make friends, and these people, you get to see them become successful, and that's kind of thrilling too, to know that you're presenting or giving them an opportunity or a venue that they can use to help them grow their business. I can see why you'd still go after it. Frankly, the one thing I miss after I left the business were the shows. Everything else seemed secondary, but at the shows, it was exciting to be there. There was an adrenaline pump, like you were just describing, going on, and that camaraderie of just being around all of these people who share their own visions of wanting to be successful. So it was kind of a loaded question because I sort of already knew the answer.
Well, you make a good attorney then.
Your current show schedule looks about as robust as ever. I take that's a good sign that you're finding the current state of the art business to be on the upswing. Would you agree? What's your outlook?
Especially events, UBS and Art Basel just released a 270-page document on the art business. And, I'll give you a couple quick figures. 51% of art is still sold through dealers, art galleries.
Okay.
41% is sold through events and art fairs. That is an enormous number of the $56 billion art industry, and 8% is sold online. I expect to see the dealer level ratchet down over the next 10 years a little bit. The event level still rising, and online rising also.
Those are fascinating numbers. Do you think there's a level? This is more fine art than decorative art, right? This is originals.
All art.
So they're looking at all art. They're looking at everything from art.com all the way up, or just
Yeah, they're looking at the art market as much as they can gather. And, you know, um,
Okay.
small mom and pop stores to Larry Gagosian, right?
Yeah.
And then the auction houses. Not everybody's going to tell you exactly how much they're selling as a dealer. The public, the auction houses that are public have to release their numbers, and so those are accurate numbers. And they get a pretty good idea from the sales of, Art Basel, Freeze, the Armory Show, and then working down Art Miami and Red Dot and Pulse and Stope and all these great shows that go on today. I mean, you think about how many art events there are in just the United States, let alone the world. But 39 years ago there was one. It was called ArtExpo New York, right?
Right.
And not many other shows at all.
No.
Today they're everywhere. It's an exciting way to buy art. I mean, as an exhibitor, as a gallery owner, a publisher, or even a solo artist, you're going to see at ArtExpo New York 30 to 35,000 people in 4 days. You're not going to see that many people go through a gallery in 5 years.
Not even close.
Right.
And
so, and then you take the Miami events. Oh my goodness, there's 20 events plus going on every year for 5 days, 6 days. And it's a very robust market down there during the first week of December. Yeah.
well, I sure miss being in New York. I hope to get back there next year for the 40th Art Expo New York. That would be one I wouldn't want to miss.
Yeah, be good.
Speaking of that, I think the deadline is for exhibiting is passed, but over the years, I sold trade show space. I often counseled artists to visit and walk a show before they jumped in as an exhibitor, especially new ones. Do you agree with that advice, and what would you encourage them?
Oh, yeah, highly, yes. I give a talk on opening day, hour and a half before we open, and talk about pricing your work, what to do, stand up, don't be shy, all that kind of stuff. Usually 200 to 250 of the exhibitors are there, and I would encourage people to go a year before, listen to my talk, meet as many people as they can. And if we had, some exhibitors that were interested in exhibiting the next year, we would let them in early to come listen to the talk for sure. Read the articles we post, get a hold of I have 5 reps, and, they're all more than willing to help them, educate them on what to do during the show. And we need to look at their work prior to them exhibiting too, to make sure that it's on par.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's great advice, because there's so much you can learn by doing that advanced research and find out, like you were saying, ask questions, talk to exhibitors, talk to reps. I always thought that like your guys, your reps, they're probably some of the most knowledgeable people in the business to talk to, and it's their job to help people, but they get to see, they know so many other, they know so many exhibitors and so many artists that their breadth of experience is greater than any single exhibitor in terms of what should I do, what are the things that I need to be thinking about in order to make sure I have a successful show. So
that's true. We've literally had people get a hold of myself or some of our reps and and they get into looking at their art, and they've matched them up with a gallery or publisher, and they've avoided coming to the show because they had some success selling before we even got to sell them a booth.
No good deed goes unpunished.
That's right.
Well, anybody who thinks the show business is just a piece of cake or a walk in the park has just never done the show business. It's really hard work, and it's very demanding. And in your position, you've got everybody coming after you, whether it's exhibitors or on the other side, the management of the facility where you're at, or the attendees, even the people who provide the services, all come to you with their problems. So you're like a bit of a traffic cop. It's no wonder that you need some downtime after you get done with a show. And the other thing is that not every show, just because you can hang a sign out there, doesn't guarantee that you're going to have success. It's trial and error. And
yeah, it's it's you take a big show like CES, right? Or, there's a broadcaster show. There's a ton of association shows in the medical field, and there's events going on all the time. We live in kind of a fractured industry, the art industry, because you can sell as an artist your work online. You could sell it through a designer. You could sell it through an art gallery. You can sell it through a dealer, somebody working out of their house. You could go with a publisher route, somebody who represents 40 to 100 artists. There's all kinds of different ways to sell your work.
Right.
And by the way, coming to a show and seeing 30,000 people, it's kind of you got to find somebody that likes the work. So there's a lot going on there, and what we try to do is educate the artists in the galleries as much as possible before they get there, so they're not shocked by having somebody approach them and say, "Hey, your $5,000 painting, I'll take 10 of them on consignment, but I'm only going to pay $2,000." So the artist comes to us and says, "Oh my God, they're grinding me on the price," and I'm like, "Wait a minute. You just found a distribution point. You should be patting yourself on the back, right?" I mean, that's somebody that likes the work, a dealer. So
right.
There's an educated process there. Yeah.
And any artist who's coming to a show who doesn't take advantage of that is just making a mistake, in my opinion, because, like I said, you and your reps have hundreds of years of experience collectively on how to handle those kind of details and all kinds of other things.
Yeah, we coach them. Definitely coach them. Yeah. And it doesn't stop after the show,
What?
Recently had a guy who was in our Spectrum Miami event, and that's a pretty big show now. We build a 65,000 square foot tent.
Wow.
In order to host the show, and he had success the year before, and this last year he didn't have much success at all. After the show, he sold 26 paintings.
Wow.
After the show, he followed up with all of his leads and the people that like the work. And it was a really good lesson because, as I said earlier, there's 20 plus shows going on in Miami. So those people are popping around saying, I like this piece, but maybe I'll find something better that I like. Well, he followed up and he found out that his follow-up paid off for him. 26 paintings.
That's fantastic.
That's huge. Yeah.
I was at a marketing meeting last night, Arizona marketing meeting, and we're sitting around at the table before the meeting started, and there was a guy who sells printing there, and he went in to do some consulting with an Alpha Graphics franchise who had 200 existing customers, but he had 200 people who bought from him previously, and then 200 other people who he gave a bid to but never bought anything. So he had these 400 lists, and the guy said, "What are you doing with them?" He said, "Nothing." And he said, "Well, there's gold in there." And I said, "Well, I haven't used those at all. I don't think there's any money there." He went after those 400 people, and in less than a week he had 53 orders from what the owner of the business thought was a dead list. He turned it 25% of them were actual buyers of printing. So it's the same thing. You can't ever give up, and you have to keep after it and be aggressive and realize that just because somebody didn't buy from you right now doesn't mean that's not the end of the world. You got to stay after them.
Yeah.
What do you tell artists? I hear this a lot, and I'm sure you have some answers. How much art do they need in order to be able to feel comfortable that I'm going to be able to fill the booth and sell, if I sell some off the walls? What kind of inventory or body of work does an artist need to really think about seriously joining ArtExpo, for instance?
Oh, I would say you need, a minimum of, medium-sized to larger-sized paintings, a minimum of, 8 to 10 paintings to bring to the show to put in a a starter booth, right? And we can store a few for the artists when they come in. More importantly, it's they really need to know how many paintings they can paint in a year, right?
Right.
If a gallery comes along and you can only paint one painting a month, that's not real exciting for a gallery who,
Right.
you know, if you're painting one painting, even if you're a month and you're selling them for $7,000, you've got 84 grand a year, and the gallery is going to take a portion of that. And so for some artists, to tell you the truth, that's okay because they're working, right?
Right.
And they're making a living on the side painting, and that's okay. You can go through life like that. Other artists that want to be, you know, 100% of an artist all the time, they need to figure out how to get a few more out the door.
Yeah. And
or raise the prices.
I think most gallery owners aren't really going to get too warmed up to somebody who has that kind of low productivity, because they're thinking if I romance your art out to my customer base and I start selling it, I want to be able to keep the pipeline full, and
right.
not always.
That's right. Yeah. Or, you know, if they can only paint a few a year, they might have to go make some prints and try to make a living that way. And
I know that you've produced a checklist for artists to exhibit at shows, and I'll provide a download link to the listeners, and we'll post it online here so that they can find a way to do it. I think that's be enormously helpful to artists to just remember things like business cards, for instance. I can remember being at I don't remember it was a Decor Expo or ArtExpo show, and there's a guy without any business cards at a show. He just forgot them because he didn't have a checklist. He just thought he threw everything in a box he thought he needed and walked out the door without his business cards. And there's all kinds of little items that you should bring, whether it's aspirin or tape or whatever, you know. So if you can provide that, that'd be.
Yeah, we definitely have a checklist. Yeah, no problem.
Let me ask you, you have so many shows, and I'm intrigued, like you've got one coming up in Santa Fe and Palm Springs, and I see Indian Wells is on your schedule for next year. How do you advise an artist on which one is the best opportunity for them?
You've got to ask some qualifying questions, you know. For instance, if you met an artist and they were looking for distribution and wanted to meet galleries, designers, architects, publishers, you know, like Progressive Editions or Woody Slaymaker, Del Jus, you know, Leeds Españos at ADC, then I would highly recommend that they would go to New York or Spectrum Miami, because there's so much incestual buying going on there, right?
Sure.
So I would highly recommend that. Now, once they can establish that, then they broaden their distribution by going to places like Santa Fe, which is the third largest art market in the United States, right? You know, we've got a great show in Art San Diego in the Del Mar Fairgrounds in late September, and you're surrounded by Rancho Santa Fe, La Jolla, Solana Beach, Del Mar, high net worth individuals. And so their retail sales are made there. The first half of our year is ArtExpo New York and soon to be Las Vegas. And then those are more for wholesale and trade.
Right.
In the second half of the year, starting with Art Santa Fe, we have Art Santa Fe, San Diego, and then the Miami events are really more collector based.
Okay.
That's kind of how the year folds out.
So if somebody's doing all sort of higher priced originals, they might be better off on the collector, going into the collector shows, or
they might be, yeah, especially if they can't paint a lot, right? And they want a little bigger piece of the pie.
If you're doing monumental pieces and just can't do that many, then
yeah,
better off.
The really hard part, Barney, is, you know, for an artist, like, do you want to paint and have somebody else take care of the business part of it? Or do you mind painting, framing, shipping, marketing, building a website, pricing your work, and calling and making the sales? Can you do all that and getting in and being a gypsy, you know, and going from some of those festivals to festivals, because that's how some of them make a living.
Right.
If you can and you have the energy, well, God bless you. But, you know, if you want to just paint, then they've got to come to ArtExpo or, you know, Miami and figure out a way to meet other people and broaden their distribution that way. Find some points out there. I mean, you know, I think if you're a really prolific painter, in my opinion, the publisher route is really the way to go, because You know, if you can paint 100 or 200 paintings a year, you've got a steady flow of income coming in, and you've got a, you know, like a Michael Havers at Progressive Editions representing you to 100 plus galleries, right? I mean, that's key. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, I think hearing 100 to 200 paintings a year to some artists is like, oh my God, how the heck do I do that? Well, you learn every speed technique that you can and get busy and realize that there's a lot of artists who do that, and that does not, the length of time that it takes you to paint a painting has nothing to do with the quality that goes into it. And I think there's a disconnect for some artists who don't understand that.
Look at Picasso, right?
Yeah, in the tens of thousands of pieces of art.
Oh my God, so much work. He draws a dove, and it's a Picasso.
So it's definitely possible. You just got to put your mind to it. And I know some techniques, like a friend of mine and somebody who's been an exhibitor in the past at ArtExpo, Scott Nichols, does photorealism, and that is a super intensive, long tail process that is really hard for him to ramp up and do more, because there's just so much that's involved with it. But even he has, over the years, found a way to speed things up and get more production, because he realized that I'm curtailing my income by virtue of the fact that I produce slowly. Beautiful, high quality work, but man, you want to make a living at it, you better have a way to get your pipeline full. I'll ask you one last question here, Eric. I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate that you've been with us today. You've had a unique, multi-decade front row seat to observe the most successful artists in the business. Are there common traits that they share? Are there things they do regularly that you or new or young artists should make sure that they are doing as well?
Oh, for sure. I would say the most important thing, and I'll give you an example of this, is, branding yourself. If I asked you, is that a Picasso? Yes. Is that a Warhol? Yes. Is that a Gerhard Richter painting? Yes, definitely. Can you tell the difference between a Renoir and a Monet? Obviously. So you've got to create something that's fresh, exciting, that you can repeat. You look at, I'll give you a good example is, Samir Samoun, right? Samir Samoun, the Canadian artist from Montreal. And he comes to ArtExpo year after year, and he sells, I think he sold 40 paintings last year at, whatever, $3,000 to $10,000 consistently. He makes enough money off ArtExpo to last a year easily. And he has a certain look and feel. It's like an impressionistic pointillism a little bit. And that's a Samir Samoun painting. I went, I gave my speech one year, and then this lady said to me, can you come look at my booth? And I said, sure. So I got over there with her, and on one wall she had some landscapes and some abstracts, and on the one wall she had these really interesting paintings of dogs. And I'm not kidding, dogs. And I looked and I thought, those dogs are real characters, And I said, so who are these, which ones did you paint? She said, well, I painted all of it. And I said, well, why do you have landscape, abstract, and dogs? And she said, well, I wanted to show the collectors that I'm versatile. And I said, well, I like the dogs. And she said, I'm authorized by the American Kennel Club. I'm only one of two artists authorized to paint the dogs for the American Kennel Club. And I said, well, you're good at it. Stick with it. And she sold the dogs. She did a good job selling the dogs. And it was just a good example of, she had created and branded herself, and these dogs, you could see the personalities of the dogs in the paintings.
Right.
It wasn't just a portrait of a Labrador Retriever. There was a personality there. The tail was wagging, something in its mouth, and it brought out the human nature, or the personality of the dog. So, but
I think it's kind of interesting too, because it speaks to the fact that you can have what some people might have thought, well, if you're doing pet portraiture or pets, you can't be at ArtExpo because it's high end, and dogs aren't high end. Well, you just disproved that, right? If you got the right look, it doesn't matter what the subject matter is.
It's tugging at the heartstrings of somebody that has a Labrador or a poodle or whatever, right? And her paintings were, I don't know, $500 to $1,000, and she did very well with them. You know, the art world, when Stephen Cohen sells a Basquiat, which he's getting ready to sell, one of the most treasured Basquiats on the planet, for $28 million, you know, I mean, that's one kind of an art sale. But when you buy a piece of art for 1,500 or 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000, you love that painting just as much as somebody else who's spending millions on a painting.
Right.
That's what collecting art is about. You don't have to be mega wealthy to collect art. You just need to have a passion for it.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Tell me the dates for ArtExpo New York in case anybody's out there on the East Coast are planning a trip to Manhattan around that time.
We open next Friday, April 21st.
April 21st.
Runs through Monday this year. We had to shift because of Easter, so we're Friday through Monday.
Okay. You're opening on my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Eric. I thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure, and look forward to seeing you out there on the exhibit trail sometime soon.
Good to see you, Barney.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.